Hello, it's me again, Irini Hara, streaming from Oslo in a calm day of autumn, very colorful, a little bit cloudy. And today I come with some reflections regarding the topic of spirituality and why I think that many people in the spiritual realm, they consider themselves or adhere to the label of spiritual being and yeah, also consider themselves a little bit special because of this label. But in reality, this is just an excuse from doing the real work on themselves. And I know that this perspective of mine and these reflections will trigger a lot of these people. To a certain extent, I'm already used to trigger people all the time. Who knows why? Or maybe no. And that's why I will never stop in doing this. Because being triggered by truths that are spoken can show us or can give us eyes to look to ourselves and to our reality in a different way, and also to doubt what we consider to be our truth. Because the real bias I can see nowadays in these spiritual communities and also in many contents that are spread as spiritually enlightened or spiritually inspired or so on. The bias I see is to think that just by being spiritual or having a spiritual practice, you own the absolute truth and that you should be praised for it and even very highly praised for your own ideas or services. Because to a certain extent, what I understand and what I see in these contents, in the words of these people, is, or I'm spiritual, I have my own perspectives on life and my own practice. I'm very enlightened. I'm ascending to a new dimension. And all the others that are not like me, they are not on the same level, so they are somehow inferior. And from the perspective of the therapists, but also of the scientists, because I have both perspectives, I can see in this attitude or in this kind of categorization, to say it like that, a survival strategy, but also at the same time a big fear of getting connected with something that will show eventually what is the truth or reality. And I consider quite obvious that each of us has its own truth about life, because each of us has own values and perspectives and judgment over life. But when the survival strategy takes place and lasts for a whole life, and that person that is in survival mode is not able to get out of it because it's too comfortable with it, with what is happening there, then this is something I'm like, I can understand that people have difficulty, enormous difficulty to connect and accept the reality for what it is. And I say this because for a long while I was there. And when I started to tap into spiritual movements or into spiritual practices more than 10 years ago, I was believing in everything almost what the so-called spiritual authorities or those people or movements that were calling themselves authorities in the spiritual realm or a community were saying and preaching and doing. And by doing this, by accepting and not questioning all those things or attitudes or even beliefs, I was actually losing myself. And I was in denial about my true reality, my disconnective patterns, the degree of disconnection I was living, and so on. And I can give few examples because lately I had a lot of different situations with different people in my community, or at least in the circle of friends I have here in Oslo. And many of them, they consider themselves spiritual. And I was actually shown, for example, some images. In one was a fire burning, probably for a mass ceremony, maybe shamanic ceremony. And there was some violet colors in the flames, orange and also violet. And the person telling me this, she affirmed that those colors are actually the presence, it's a proof of the presence of the violet flame from that ascended master that is Saint Germain. Not sure how many you have heard about him, but there are different ascended masters in some theosophic or esoteric theories and practices, where these beings that once were on earth, even Jesus and Mary Magdalene or all sorts of other beings, are considered to have ascended. Of course, they went in the other realm after their death, but they are considered to still be present and act upon humanity, supporting individuals and humanity. And I argued, when I looked to the pictures of that fire, that it's merely a scientific phenomenon, because when you have combustion phenomena, it was wood burning, there are compounds that can give to the flame, and that is scientifically proved. You can experience this in a scientific lab, in a chemistry lab, then can give different colors to the flame. And still, even if I brought a scientific argument that can be proved, that person insisted that it was the violet flame of Saint Germain in that fire. And I couldn't convince her of a different reality. And I didn't want to argue, but I told also her that from a scientific perspective and as a therapist, I try to be very objective on several phenomena that spiritual people would consider like magic. Like in this case, the presence of an ascended master energy in the form of a violet flame. And honestly, I often can visualize things by myself, but when I do it, I have full confidence and understanding that it can be a product of my imagination. And of course, when you are already in this spiritual belief that all these ascended masters can interfere in our life and bring us colors in the flames or all sorts of other kind of extraterrestrial experiences, it's normal that you'll consider that as your truth and belief. But it's not mine. And I tried to argue why, but I understood it was not possible to argue because that person is not receptive to what I say. And it doesn't matter how many arguments I bring from science or reality, he would not listen. And that is a trauma survival strategy. She's not aware, or she doesn't want to be aware, that she tries to protect herself from a bigger and deeper truth that might actually be even painful to hear and understand, by adopting these beliefs and seeing things that are not real, because she believes in magic. I also believe in magic, but I believe in magic that can be proven scientifically, because there are all sorts of magic things in our life that have a scientific root and explanation. And there are also other things in our life that don't have this explanation, and that they are just part of a mythical landscape that we carry inside. And we sometimes because, as I said, the pain or difficulty to connect with that pain is too much, we accept that mythical landscape and we make it our daily life. We start to believe in it so much that we cannot accept that it's not real, that is just in our head or in head of other people too. And I want to explain you how this works at a more phenomenological level and how this is possible. How this is possible that so many people into the spiritual world, they are affected by this, I will not call it an hallucinations, but is part of something that is a product of our mind, is a product of our own beliefs, but not necessarily is reality and not necessarily is true. And phenomenologically, we have, and in behind the scenes, our life is governed by laws of the morphogenetic field. And we humans, as a species, as any other species, are able to create this morphogenetic field and to make it move through our own intentions and energies. And if you will go and read books and videos that Rupert Sheldrake's, that is a biologist that has this phenomenological approach, and that might be actually spiritual in his approach too, speaks about these morphogenetic fields and how it works. Because it is an evolutionary field of information. And as I said, we humans, we have it for many generations behind up to the present. Other species on Earth, even plants, everything that has a system of organization as living beings has it. So that is science, and that has been proved. There is a theory, but it's a theory that makes all sense if we see what is present around that, how nature functions, how our body, our psyche, our consciousness work also. So in my understanding, as also constellator, because I work with family constellator and systemic constellations in general, I already tapped into this field many times. And I saw very explicitly, almost scientifically, how the field works, how actually miraculous is, how much magic can happen in a constellation and after it, because there is always developments also after, and how many entanglements exist between energies, between different members of the same family or systems in general, community. And I made up my own understanding of this morphogenetic field, also understanding that the same way we add information to our behavior and thought patterns to the field sends us back something. And there are many myths, many legends that belong to the field and have been created since the dawn of humanity and then propagated through time into the field. And they became actually archetypes of behaviors, archetypes of inner qualities, archetypes of beliefs for humanity. And you will ask me how this relates with spirituality and with what I consider to be true or not in spirituality. It relates because spirituality, or spiritual movement in general, and spiritual people are also included in the field. Every person, spiritual or not spiritual, is part of a system. First is the family of origin, and then with all the ancestors creating a bigger system. But then we have the organizations where we work for, or the communities we belong to, the group of friends and so on. They are all systems. Even our own body, from a systemic perspective, it is a system and works with all its components as a system. That's why we can approach with constellation also health issues. Our relationships the same. So I think it's very easy that the field, once we feed it for a long time with all sorts of belief and practices that we might consider spiritual, then creates this mythological landscape. And we have access to it. And moreover, we can personalize it based on our individual experience. So it's a two-folded way of communication between us as individuals, our thoughts, our ideas, our way of being, and the system or the field itself. Now, one way to get out of the illusion that spirituality can solve everything, or that only certain people have authority in terms of spirituality, just because they have, I don't know how many followers, or they are well known, or so on. One way to get out of this is to start working with the field. And that means you start working on yourself, because you are part of the system, you are part of the field. And when you start working, and especially when you go in the direction of your own traumas, plus the ancestor trauma, trans and intergenerational trauma, and sometimes you can actually look also to the collective trauma, because collective trauma also embeds all the individual traumas and transgeneration trauma and so on. When you start to look into this seriously, then let's say that you get a broader perspective, but also deeper perspective on how you contribute to the field, what the field gives you, how the field challenges you, because there are many challenges when you start to do this work, as you are faced with realities and truths that you cannot ignore anymore. You are faced with your own emotions, with what you have repressed, with that pain that you didn't want to look to. So when you start to do this, then something becomes obvious, that you have a choice. You have a choice to continue in our own survival strategy and to deny the reality, to continue to consider yourself enlightened and special, possessing all truth of all times, or you are given the choice to say, I might not be so right, actually. Actually, I start to have doubts about what all these spiritual enlightened people start to preach, and also what they claim or what they ask for, the guidance they give us. It's very common nowadays to hear that there is an ascension process, and Schumann resonance gives you the intensity sometimes of the process, because you can actually measure, and this might be like a scientific proof according to certain people. And that we are affected, of course, our body is affected all the time, because we are exposed to radiation and all sorts of risk factors in the environment. But we are affected by this Schumann resonance, and it creates physiological and psychological symptoms. And I will challenge those people who really believe in this, that it's all because ascension process and Schumann resonance, to actually go to a session of trauma therapy, investigate those symptoms. Because for sure the cause is not the Schumann resonance or the ascension process, but something else, really hidden in the psyche and the body of those people. And again, I'm saying it is from the perspective of the scientist, of a human being who tried many different things, who experienced spirituality and believed in many things, and that now finally awakened to a different reality and truth. And it's like, the choice is very easy to make. Either you go this way, or you get stuck and continue your survival strategy. Either you really evolve and you develop a deeper understanding of yourself, you start to meet yourself in all those deeper layers that you ignored for a long time, or you continue to practice and to believe in extraordinary magical things that do not exist, because they come just from your imagination, and the imagination of the collective too, because we are always in sync with the collective and with the phenomena that are considered magical in the collective. So I really want you to reflect on this, because I'm not saying this because I consider myself superior or possessing the almighty truth. I'm not even consider myself spiritual anymore because I understood there is too much bias, too much confusion and disconnection in the spiritual realm. And I don't want to stay there. I want to stay with my feet on the ground and the head on my shoulders and be aligned with who I am, with my core essence, and guided by my own values, and not taking bullshit or all sorts of theories as granted or valid anymore. And I feel sorry for those who will get offended by what I'm saying, but there is only one way to understand it. Try therapy, experience this self-meeting with yourself, with everything you carried and didn't want to look into it. It's not easy to do. It's not difficult to do it. It's quite easy. The difficult is to understand how long time you wasted by not doing it and staying in your survival strategy. So I hope you reflect, and I hope you get out of the bias, connect with the field, and ask wisdom. Ask guidance from the field because it's what I'm doing all the time. When I have doubts or I don't know what to believe, or when I feel like in my gut feeling that says, oh, something is not right here. And something is not right in what's happening in all those people preaching ascension process. Trust me, it's a big gut feeling I have. I leave you here with this hopefully short intervention. I didn't monitor the time. Subscribe to this channel for further contents. Check my podcast in case you are affected or part of the neurodivergent community. And like or share my contents if you think that is worth it. Thank you. Blessed be your day and week ahead. Bye.